The invasion begins. The skies over Earth darkened as the Zarthian warships emerged from hyperspace. Massive vessels, each the size of a small city, cast ominous shadows across continents. Panic erupted globally as the alien armada positioned itself in high orbit. In Washington, D.C., President Elena Reyes stood in the Situation Room, surrounded by grim-faced military advisors. "What are we looking at, General Harris?" The grizzled general pointed to a holographic display. "Ma'am, we're detecting over 500 ships, heavily armed. Our orbital defenses are insignificant in comparison." Reyes' jaw clenched. "And our ground-based weapons, unlikely to penetrate their shields based on initial scans." As if on cue, a crackling transmission filled the room. A hologram materialized. A tall, reptilian figure with iridescent scales and piercing yellow eyes. "People of Earth," the alien's voice boomed, "I am Supreme Commander Zaxler of the Zarthian Empire. Your planet is now under our control. Resistance is futile. Surrender, and you may live as our subjects. Defy us, and face annihilation." The transmission cut off, leaving stunned silence in its wake. Rice turned to her advisors. "Options." Before anyone could respond, alarms blared. The holographic display showed red impact points spreading across the globe. "They're targeting military installations and major cities," General Harris shouted. Outside, the sky lit up as energy beams lanced down from the Zarthian ships. Washington Monument crumbled. The Pentagon erupted in flames. Across the world, similar scenes of destruction unfolded. In New York, Dr. Samira Patel watched in horror from her lab at Columbia University as Manhattan burned. The astrophysicist's mind raced, trying to comprehend the advanced technology they faced. In rural Montana, former Special Forces operative Jake Martinez grabbed his go-bag and headed for his underground bunker. His military training kicked in. Survive first, fight later. In Tokyo, teenage hacker Yuki Tanaka furiously typed at her computer, attempting to breach the aliens' communication networks. If they could intercept the invaders' transmissions, maybe they'd find a weakness. Back in D.C., Reyes and her team were evacuated to a secure underground facility. As they descended, she turned to her chief of staff. "Get me every scientist, engineer, and tactician we have. We need a plan, and we need it yesterday." The first 24 hours of the invasion were catastrophic. Earth's military forces, despite valiant efforts, were overwhelmed. Zarthian ground troops, 9-foot-tall, armored behemoths, began landing in strategic locations. Yet, amidst the chaos, pockets of resistance formed. In the ruins of London, Royal Air Force pilot Sarah Collins led a group of survivors to an underground shelter. In Rio de Janeiro, UFC fighter Marco Silva organized a guerrilla resistance cell. Across the globe, humans refused to go quietly into the night. Dr. Patel, having escaped the destruction of New York, found herself at a hastily assembled think tank in the Rocky Mountains. Brilliant minds from various fields worked around the clock, searching for any advantage against the alien tech. As the first day of the invasion came to a close, humanity stood on the brink. Cities lay in ruins, governments were in disarray, and the Zarthian forces seemed unstoppable. But in hidden bunkers, secret labs, and makeshift command centers, the seeds of resistance were being sown. Supreme Commander Zaxler, watching the devastation from his flagship, allowed himself a satisfied smile. The humans had put up more of a fight than expected, but the outcome was never in doubt. Soon, Earth would be just another conquest for the mighty Zarthian Empire. Little did he know, humanity's greatest strength lay not in its weapons or technology, but in its indomitable spirit and endless creativity. The real battle was just beginning. As night fell across a changed Earth, survivors huddled in darkness, mourning their losses and fearing what morning would bring. But even in this darkest hour, hope flickered. In labs and bunkers, in ruined cities and remote outposts, humans were adapting, planning, refusing to give up. The invasion had begun, but humanity's story was far from over. The coming days would test them as never before, pushing the limits of human ingenuity, courage, and determination. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and every human left standing had a part to play in the fight to come. Humanity's desperate plan. As dawn broke on the second day of the Zarthian invasion, the true scale of devastation became apparent. Major cities worldwide lay in ruins, with millions dead or displaced. Yet, in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity began to rally. In the Rocky Mountain facility, Dr. Samira Patel pored over data from the alien ships. Her eyes widened as she noticed a pattern in their energy signatures. Dr. Chen, she called to her colleague, look at this fluctuation in their shield frequencies. Dr. Wei Chen, a quantum physicist, rushed over. His eyes darted across the screen, a glimmer of hope appearing. It's cyclical. If we could match that frequency at its weakest point, we might be able to penetrate their shields. Samira finished. Meanwhile, in Montana, Jake Martinez emerged from his bunker, gathering a group of local survivors. His military experience proved invaluable as he organized them into a makeshift militia. We're not out of this fight yet, he told them, his voice steely with determination. In Tokyo, Yuki Tanaka's relentless hacking attempts finally bore fruit. She managed to intercept fragments of Zarthian communications, though she couldn't understand their language. The data patterns could prove crucial. President Reyes, operating from a mobile command center, received updates from these pockets of resistance. We need to coordinate these efforts, she told her advisors. Every bit of intelligence, every small victory, could be the key to turning this around. At that moment, a transmission came through from Dr. Patel's team. As Samira explained their discovery about the shield frequencies, a spark of hope ignited in the room. If we can exploit this weakness, General Harris mused, we might have a chance at bringing down their ships. But we'd need to get close enough to transmit the counter-frequency, another advisor pointed out. Our air forces are decimated. Rey's mind raced. What about civilian aircraft? Anything that can fly and carry the necessary equipment. As plans began to form, reports came in from around the world. In Brazil, Marco Silva's guerrilla team had managed to ambush a small group of Zarthian ground troops, capturing their weapons. In London, Sarah Collins and her team discovered that the aliens were vulnerable to certain radio frequencies, causing them disorientation. These small victories, while not turning the tide, proved that the Zarthians weren't invincible. Humanity had faced extinction-level threats before, from ice ages to pandemics, and had always found a way to survive and adapt. Dr. Patel's team worked tirelessly to develop a device that could disrupt the Zarthian shields. They faced numerous setbacks, each failure pushing them to the brink of despair. But with every attempt, they learned more about the alien technology. Jake Martinez, hearing about the plan, began training pilots from his militia group. They used crop dusters and small private planes, preparing for what would be the most important flight of their lives. Yuki, with help from a global network of hackers, continued to decipher the Zarthian communications. Slowly, a picture of the invaders' hierarchy and tactics emerged. This intelligence proved crucial in predicting their movements and understanding their weaknesses. As the third day of the invasion dawned, President Reyes addressed what remained of the world's leaders. We have a plan, she announced, her voice steady despite the weight on her shoulders. It's dangerous, and success is far from guaranteed. But it's a chance to show these invaders that humanity will not go quietly into the night. The plan was multifaceted and global in scale. While Dr. Patel's team finalized the shield-disrupting device, guerrilla teams worldwide would launch coordinated attacks on Zarthian ground forces, creating chaos and confusion. Meanwhile, a ragtag fleet of civilian aircraft, led by the few remaining military pilots, would attempt to get close enough to the Zarthian ships to deploy the disruptor. It was a desperate gambit, relying on surprise and the aliens' overconfidence. As preparations reached their final stages, a somber mood fell over the resistance. Many of those preparing for the assault knew they might not return. Families said goodbye, not knowing if it would be for the last time. In the Rocky Mountain facility, Dr. Patel looked at the device they had created, a culmination of human scientific achievement, born from desperation and ingenuity. "Let's hope this works," she murmured, carefully packing it for transport. Jake Martinez briefed his pilots one last time. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human on this planet, for our very existence as a species." Across the world, similar scenes played out. Humanity, backs against the wall, prepared to launch its counterattack. The next 24 hours would determine the fate of Earth. As night fell, President Reyes sent out a final encrypted message to all resistance cells. "Operation Prometheus is go. May fortune favor the bold." With these words, humanity's desperate plan was set in motion. The coming dawn would either see the beginning of Earth's liberation or the final chapter of human history. Either way, the people of Earth were determined to meet their fate on their feet, fighting to the last. The stage was set for a battle that would echo through the ages, if there were any left to tell the tale. Unlikely heroes emerge. As Operation Prometheus launched, the fate of humanity rested on the shoulders of ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances. Dawn broke over the Montana airfield where Jake Martinez and his makeshift squadron prepared for takeoff. A motley collection of crop dusters, private planes, and a few surviving military aircraft stood ready. Jake climbed into the cockpit of a weathered F-16, one of the few fighter jets they'd managed to salvage. "Remember the plan," he said over the radio. "We're the distraction. Keep those alien bastards busy while our guys with the disruptor get in close." Across the globe, similar scenes unfolded. In Rio, Marco Silva led his guerrilla team towards a Zarthian ground base. In London, Sarah Collins and her RAF pilots prepared a daring raid on a hovering alien cruiser. Meanwhile, Dr. Samira Patel found herself on a retrofitted 747, clutching the precious shield disruptor. "I should be in a lab," she muttered, checking the device for the 100th time. "Sometimes the field is the best lab, Doc," grinned Captain Aisha Khoury, the ace pilot who'd volunteered for this suicide mission. Ready to make history. In Tokyo, Yuki Tanaka's fingers flew across her keyboard. She'd integrated herself into the Resistance's communication network, ready to feed real-time intel to the strike teams. As the counterattack began, the Zarthians were caught off guard. They'd grown complacent, believing Earth's military might have been broken. They couldn't have been more wrong. Jake's squadron zoomed towards the nearest Zarthian ship, unleashing a barrage of missiles. Most exploded harmlessly against the alien shields, but the attack served its purpose, drawing attention and fire. "Now, Doc," Aisha yelled, pushing the 747 into a steep climb towards the Zarthian vessel's underbelly. Samira's heart pounded as she activated the disruptor. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, a ripple passed over the alien ship's surface. "It's working," Samira shouted. "Their shields are fluctuating." Across the world, other teams reported similar successes. The Zarthians' impenetrable defense was beginning to crack. In Rio, Marco's team used the moment of confusion to breach the alien base. Armed with captured Zarthian weapons, they wreaked havoc from within. Sarah's RAF squadron, emboldened by the shield's weakness, pressed their attack on the London cruiser. "For Earth and Street George," Sarah yelled, unleashing a volley of missiles that finally penetrated the alien defenses. But the Zarthians weren't defeated yet. Supreme Commander Zaxler, enraged by this unexpected resistance, ordered a full counterattack. "Incoming." Yuki's voice crackled over the comm. Massive energy buildup in the Zarthian flagship. Jake looked up to see a blinding light gathering at the nose of the largest alien ship. "Evasive maneuvers," he shouted, but knew it was hopeless. Whatever the Zarthians were charging up, it was big enough to wipe out their entire squadron. Just as the alien weapon prepared to fire, A series of explosions rippled across its surface. The energy buildup dissipated in a harmless flash. "What the hell?" Jake breathed. "You can thank me later," came a gruff voice over the radio. A battered space shuttle burst through the clouds, trailing smoke. "This is Colonel Jenna Harper of the International Space Station," the voice continued. "Sorry, we're late to the party. Took us a while to retrofit this old bird with some surprises we cooked up in orbit." The arrival of the ISS crew, who'd spent the invasion turning their orbital laboratory into a makeshift warship, turned the tide of the battle. With the Zarthian flagship temporarily disabled, Earth's forces pressed their advantage. Samira's disruptor allowed human weapons to penetrate alien defenses, while Yuki's hacking disrupted their communications. As battles raged across the globe, acts of incredible heroism emerged. In Australia, Aboriginal trackers led resistance fighters through the outback to ambush alien patrols. In the Arctic, Inuit hunters used their knowledge of the harsh terrain to outmaneuver Zarthian search parties. Each small victory added up. The Zarthians, for the first time, found themselves on the defensive. But the aliens still had the advantage of numbers and technology. As the battle stretched into its second day, fatigue began to set in among Earth's defenders. Jake's squadron, now reduced to half its original size, continued to harass the alien ships. Samira and Aisha's 747, running on fumes, made desperate passes to disrupt as many Zarthian shields as possible. Marco's team, trapped inside the Rio base, fought a running battle through alien corridors. Sarah's Wraith pilots, out of missiles, resorted to suicidal ramming attacks. Just when it seemed humanity had reached its limit, a message crackled over the global resistance network. It was President Reyes. To all Earth forces, her voice rang out, steady and determined. "You've done the impossible. You've shown these invaders the true strength of humanity. But we're not done yet. We've detected a weakness in the Zarthian command structure. If we can take out their leadership, we can end this war. I'm asking for one final push. The fate of our world hangs in the balance. Who's with me?" A chorus of affirmatives flooded the channel. Despite their exhaustion, despite the overwhelming odds, humanity rallied for one last, desperate gambit. As plans for the final assault came together, Jake looked out over the battle-scarred sky. "Well, Earth," he murmured, "looks like we've still got some fight left in us after all." The stage was set for the final confrontation. Humanity, battered but unbroken, prepared to take the fight directly to the heart of the Zarthian invasion force. The next few hours would determine the fate of Earth and showcase the true strength of the human spirit. The tide turns. As President Reyes' call to action galvanized Earth's defenders, a daring plan took shape. The key to victory lay in a coordinated assault on the Zarthian command ship, where Supreme Commander Zaxler directed the invasion. Jake Martinez, his fighter running on fumes, linked up with Colonel Harper's shuttle. "What's the plan, Colonel?" "We're going to punch a hole in that command ship's defenses," Harper replied, her voice steely with determination. "Dr. Patel's disruptor has been modified. We're going to overload their entire shield grid." Meanwhile, Dr. Patel and Captain Corey's 747 rendezvoused with a flotilla of civilian aircraft, each carrying makeshift versions of the shield disruptor. "Remember," Samira instructed the pilots, "we need to hit them from all angles simultaneously. Timing is everything." Across the globe, ground forces prepared for their part in the assault. Marco Silva's team in Rio, having fought their way out of the alien base, now led an army of resistance fighters armed with captured Zarthian weapons. In London, Sarah Collins, down to her last functioning aircraft, coordinated with European resistance cells for a massive ground-to-air attack. Yuki Tanaka, her eyes red from sleepless nights of hacking, had made a breakthrough. "I've cracked their main command protocols," she announced over the secure channel. "We can disrupt their entire fleet's coordination for a short window." As Earth's forces moved into position, Supreme Commander Zaxler grew increasingly agitated. The humans' resilience defied all logic. How could these primitives be pushing back his superior forces? Enough. He roared to his subordinates. Prepare the planet killer. We'll wipe this miserable rock clean and harvest the resources from the ashes. But as the Zarthians prepared their ultimate weapon, humanity launched its desperate gambit. Now, President Reyes commanded. Yuki activated her virus, throwing the Zarthian fleet into disarray. Simultaneously, the swarm of aircraft led by Samira and Aisha activated their disruptors. A wave of energy washed over the Zarthian command ship, its shields flickering and failing. Shield breach confirmed. Samira shouted jubilantly. Jake and Colonel Harper didn't waste a second. Their ships streaked towards the gap in the Zarthian defenses, followed by every operational aircraft Earth could muster. On the ground, Marco's forces in Rio and Sarah's in London launched a barrage of captured Zarthian energy weapons, further overwhelming the alien defenses. Inside the command ship, alarms blared as systems failed across the board. Zaxler watched in disbelief as human forces penetrated his supposedly impregnable fortress. Jake's fighter, escorted by Harper's shuttle, navigated the labyrinthine interior of the massive ship. We need to find the central power core, Harper instructed. Destroy that, and this whole ship goes down. As they flew deeper into the ship, they encountered fierce resistance. Zarthian fighters swarmed them, energy bolts lighting up the cavernous chambers. I'll hold them off, Jake shouted, peeling away to engage the alien craft. You find that core. Outside, the battle raged on. Samira and Aisha's 747, now more patched than plain, continued to coordinate the disruptor assault. Marco and Sarah's ground forces pushed back Zarthian troops, reclaiming Earth one block at a time. In orbit, the remaining crew of the International Space Station used their cobbled-together weapons to pick off Zarthian ships, creating chaos in the alien fleet. But victory hung by a thread. The Zarthians still outnumbered and outgunned Earth's forces. If the strike on the command ship failed, all would be lost. Inside the alien vessel, Colonel Harper finally located the power core, a massive, pulsating orb of energy. But before she could line up her shot, her shuttle took a direct hit. Engines failing. She grunted, fighting the controls. I don't think I can. Suddenly, Jake's voice crackled over the radio. I've got your back, Colonel. His fighter streaked past, drawing enemy fire. With a final burst of effort, Harper aimed her shuttle at the power core. For Earth, she whispered, and fired everything she had left. The explosion was blinding. The command ship shuddered, secondary explosions rippling through its structure. The command ship is going down. Yuki's excited voice echoed across all channels. Repeat, the Zarthian command ship is falling. A cheer went up from every human on the battlefield. They watched in awe as the massive alien vessel, once a symbol of their impending doom, now plummeted towards the Earth, trailing fire and debris. Supreme Commander Zaxler, his empire crumbling around him, couldn't comprehend his defeat. As his ship broke apart, his last thoughts were of the impossible. How had these primitive humans done the unthinkable? As the Zarthian command ship crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, a shockwave of hope swept across the planet. Without central command, the alien forces fell into disarray. The tide had turned. Humanity, against all odds, had seized the advantage. But the war wasn't over yet. As Earth's defenders pressed their sudden advantage, they knew that the final push to victory would demand every ounce of courage and ingenuity they had left. The next few hours would determine whether this was truly the dawn of Earth's liberation, or merely a brief respite before final defeat. Either way, humanity had proven that it would not go down without a fight. And what a fight it had been. Earth's triumph. As the Zarthian command ship sank into the Atlantic, a moment of stunned silence fell over the battlefield. Then, a roar of triumph erupted from every human communication channel. The seemingly invincible alien force had been dealt a crippling blow. President Reyes, her voice thick with emotion, addressed the global resistance. The enemy is on the ropes, but this fight isn't over. Push forward. Show them the true strength of humanity. With their command structure in chaos, the Zarthian forces began to fracture. Some continued to fight ferociously, while others attempted to retreat. Earth's defenders, emboldened by their success, pressed their advantage. Jake Martinez, having narrowly escaped the exploding command ship, regrouped with the remaining fighter squadrons. "Let's finish this," he growled, leading a charge against the disoriented alien fleet. On the ground, Marco Silva's guerrilla forces in Rayob launched a coordinated assault on the Zarthian ground troops. Without orders from above, the alien soldiers found themselves outmaneuvered by the humans' adaptability and knowledge of the terrain. In London, Sarah Collins led a daring raid to capture a grounded Zarthian ship. "If we can figure out how to fly this thing," she told her team, "we can turn their own weapons against them." Dr. Samira Patel and Captain Aisha Khoury, their 747 finally giving out, crash-landed near a Zarthian ground base in the Sahara. Undeterred, they joined up with local Tuareg rebels to launch an attack on the facility. Yuki Tanaka, her fingers flying over her keyboard, continued to wreak havoc on the aliens' communications. "Their encryption is falling apart," she reported excitedly. "We can feed them false orders, turn them against each other." As battles raged across the globe, acts of incredible heroism and ingenuity emerged. In the ruins of Moscow, a group of physicists used salvaged Zarthian tech to create an electromagnetic pulse, disabling alien vehicles across Eastern Europe. In the Amazon rainforest, indigenous tribes led alien patrols into deadly traps, using their ancestral knowledge of the jungle. The ISTF crew, their shuttle badly damaged, made a risky atmospheric re-entry to join the ground fight. Colonel Harper, bruised but unbowed, rallied survivors in Cape Canaveral to mount a defense against a Zarthian counterattack. As Earth's forces pushed forward, they began to capture alien technology intact. Scientists and engineers worked feverishly to understand and repurpose the advanced tech, turning the Zarthians' weapons against them. But the aliens weren't defeated yet. A group of Zarthian commanders, realizing their invasion was failing, decided on a desperate final gambit. They began to power up their remaining ships' engines, planning to ram them into Earth's major cities in a last act of destruction. Yuki, intercepting this plan, sent out an urgent warning. "We need to stop those ships," she cried, "or we'll lose everything we've fought for." Jake, hearing the call, assembled every aircraft still capable of flight. "This is it, people," he told the ragtag fleet of fighters, civilian planes, and captured alien craft. One last push. For Earth. As the Zarthian ships began their suicide runs, they met a wall of resistance. Human pilots, flying everything from F-22s to crop dusters retrofitted with alien weapons, engaged in a desperate battle above the skies of every major city. In New York, Jake found himself in a deadly dogfight with a Zarthian commander's ship heading for Manhattan. Out of missiles and with his guns jammed, Jake made the ultimate sacrifice play. "See you in Valhalla," he muttered, aiming his fighter directly at the alien ship's engines. The resulting explosion lit up the sky over New York Harbor, the Statue of Liberty standing defiant in the foreground. Jake's sacrifice had saved millions. Similar scenes played out across the globe. Sarah Collins, at the controls of her captured Zarthian ship, managed to shoot down 3 suicide runners over Europe before being forced to crash land in the English Channel. Marco Silva and his guerrillas used hijacked alien anti-aircraft guns to protect Rio de Janeiro. As the last Zarthian suicide ship was brought down over Tokyo, a silence fell across the world. The alien threat, which had seemed so overwhelming just days before, had been broken. In the aftermath, as the dust settled on a changed Earth, humanity emerged battered but victorious. The cost had been enormous. Great cities lay in ruins. Millions had perished, but the human spirit remained unbroken. President Reyes, speaking from the ruins of the White House, addressed a global audience. Today, we have written a new chapter in human history. We faced extinction, and we refused to go quietly into the night. We fought, we persevered, and we won. Not as Americans, Russians, Chinese, or Brazilians, but as Earthlings, as humanity united. In the months and years that followed, Earth began the long process of rebuilding. The captured Zarthian technology accelerated human advancement by centuries. The threat of alien invasion had done what centuries of diplomacy could not. It united the people of Earth as never before. Dr. Samira Patel led a team of international scientists in studying and adapting the alien tech, ushering in a new age of scientific discovery. Yuki Tanaka's expertise in cracking the Zarthian systems made her a key figure in developing Earth's new global defense network. Marco Silva and Sarah Collins, hailed as heroes, worked to train a new generation of defenders, preparing humanity for any future threats from the stars. The survivors of the ISS crew, including Colonel Harpert, spearheaded a renewed push for space exploration and colonization. As for the Zarthians who survived, those who surrendered were treated with a mercy they hadn't shown their human foes. Many were eventually integrated into Earth society, their knowledge and technology helping to rebuild the world they had tried to conquer. 5 years after the invasion, as humanity celebrated its victory and remembered its fallen heroes, a new ship rose from the rebuilt Kennedy Space Center. Its mission: to carry human explorers beyond our solar system for the first time. As the ship broke free of Earth's atmosphere, Captain Aisha Khoury, commander of this historic mission, looked back at the blue marble of Earth. "We went through hell," she said to her crew, "but we came out stronger. Now, let's show the universe what humanity can really do." The ship's engines flared, and humanity took its first steps into a larger galaxy, not as conquerors, but as explorers, carrying with them the indomitable spirit that had saved their world. The Zarthian invasion, meant to be Earth's end, had instead become the beginning of humanity's greatest chapter. The stars, once a source of terror, now beckoned with infinite possibilities, and humanity, tested by fire and found unbreakable, was ready to answer that call.